What is IC3D? IC3D is a new innovative 3D visualization ideation software for packaging, creative, and engineer designers. Basically, it's an easy and fast, complete solution. The focus for the product really gets into flexible packaging, labels, folded carton, point of purchase displays, shrink films, bottles, tins, and so much more. What I want to go through today is really to overview all the packaging types. I'm going to try to go through during the software demo to touch on each of these so that you can understand what 3D or IC3D can do for you as a solution for 3D visualization. Some of the packaging types that we've seen, we're going to try to cover the majority of those today in the demonstration. Shrink wrap capability, corrugated in containers where you're doing carton fold up. Also paperboard folding cartons, point of sale displays, different flexible packaging, labels and different tags that you can add to different models, printed rigid plastics, glass and metal container. One of the things we really look at in the creative process is that development time, trying to look at ways of which the way things are done today, where you go through a lot of different ideas, creative development, rendering that 3D, taking a lot of time to render those final 3Ds or even a final mock-up or a prototype. In totality, it's taken around 33 business days to accomplish in a cycle time of one of our clients. When we look at that with the IC3D solution, we really see a reduction in that time almost in half for that improvement. So, of course, half the time or less is what we're looking for to reduce your time to market, try to get that product or image to that market as fast as you can, reducing the design iterations that you have, the number of comps that are created or physical pieces, and then also the reduction of cost in generating those 3D renders that some people are charging today, as well as the production waste, which overall increases your productivity and your business opportunities that are available to you. Some of the new things that we see or that we put into our product for those of you that are joining us that have seen the product before, we now have Smart Shrink, a very, very fast solution allowing us to shrink around bottle containers or other metal objects or any type of product, both vertical and horizontal wrapping of those products. And then also we've improved our photorealism to allow us to show really final artwork and photorealistic images as we have them. So rather than go through a lot of the PowerPoint presentation, I really want to get into the product demo to show you IC3D. I have the interface open here directly. First off, I want to explain the interface. What we have here below is this is where our models are contained. We add a bunch of generic models that we've kind of seen throughout the industry, just some guided models to allow you to use or play around with in the software, but probably not a product that you have or need directly. So for products that you're working with, or if you have a vendor that's providing you different things, you can actually add in any one of the multitude of different product or different software type models that come in a 3D space, from a Collada file, Modo files, even STL files, where it's a structural CAD drawing to bring those into this. And with that, if I were to come in and try to add in or import a model, I could easily just come in, import, and select an STL file to bring into here. Of course, I was at that shortcut a minute ago and that went away. So let me go back one level here. So here's an STL file, as we would bring in that structurally. Once I bring that in, it shows me my millimeters and size that I have, or in inches. Now I could actually then take and add my material. These materials, again, are just some standard materials that we add, because these can all be customized to the materials that your clients or yourself would need. If I wanted to add in that glass, I can easily just drag that in, and now I have my material as I would need that. Now, if I wanted to add a label directly to a model that I've brought into here, I can easily just select this, size my label as necessary, and then bring that label onto here, position that label in the area where I want that, and then start working with that. Let me show you a demonstration of the product that we've done a couple times here. I'm going to go into a model that we have just a wine bottle here. I'll drop that into the scene. I could select this, and as you saw earlier, I could just add a new label, or I can work with an existing PDF file or Illustrator file that I have just by opening up that Illustrator link. As I come in here, I can easily just select my wine bottle label. As I do that, it comes into Illustrator, which is our connection space here. I'm just going to take my die line here, which is my cut, and actually put it then onto a layer that we add for the cutout. Paste that right in place. Once that's been done, we can then go ahead and use our plugin to update IC3D. Once we've updated IC3D, we can come back here. As you can see, we have our label on. We can then move that around to where we need to position that and have it in place. Now, as you can see, we may have gold lettering that's coming across here. So as I click on that label, I can see any spot colors that I may have within my file that need to have any alterations or visualization applied to it. So I can come in here and actually give that a brush silver view, click on that, actually add that below, and now, once we do that, we can see that we have that metallic finish to that gold within there. Now, if I wanted to add a bump to that as well, or make that an embossed layer, I can come in here and add that embossment to that, and you can now see that come in with that embossed layer for that. Same thing can be done for our glass if we wanted to. So if we wanted to make an embossed pattern on our glass, we can actually add just a generic label here, put this up onto the area where we want that, add in, go into Illustrator here. Once we're in the Illustrator, we have a clean slate now that we can design a pattern or whatever we may need to do within there. So on here, I just need to make a custom color called Emboss. Select that, use that maybe as my text. Now just position that. Now we can update IC3D. Oops. Make sure I grab my emboss and update again. Now here we can take our label and we can actually then make that label transparent. With making that transparent, now I can just focus on that text, take that text, add my emboss, and now, if we zoom into our glass, we can see that we now have that. Emboss that out. Now we have embossed glass for that. Another thing that we can do, since we're working with a bottle, do this quickly, is we can get in and we can actually fill this bottle with liquid. So I'll go ahead and choose that. Select the liquid to fill this with. So we can colorize that, which I preset earlier, both the liquid color and the specular. Now that that's been done, we can increase our change our transparency, increase the fill, and now we have our bottle completed with our simulation and our embossed glass. So that's quickly labeling a model. And of course, that holds true with a lot of different items down here. One of the things that we have is a powerful technology in our software is the ability to actually do a dynamic mesh for our labels and where they're locating. So I'm just going to colorize this so we can see this. When I add a label on and want to actually move this label around, we can understand it dynamically how that mesh is going to interact with that label. So as I move this around the handle, anywhere where it's flat on the surface where I can apply this label, it will allow it to look flat. If I go into areas where it's not, it won't allow it to lay flat, so it's not a good spot for that label. So that's some patented technology that we have within our software. From there, some other things that we get into, we have the ability to use templates, and the templates really allow us to use a common type of flexible package or even a carton or a 2D spin to allow us to design different elements within here. What I wanted to show you now is going to the ability for carton fold up. So I'm going to show this carton fold-up by importing in a die line. Now your die line can be a DXF or a CF2 file. If the die line were to have two colors, it would automatically tell me that there's two colors within here, allow me to continue and bring this in. Where that becomes valuable is when I actually would split the lines, it would know what is the cut and fold. But since we don't know that, we can go in here and choose that. And we actually get some warnings as well, just advisory warnings that these don't seem to have a connection or they only connect at one end. That's just a caution, not that it's not okay, but just letting you know of an area of question that the software found. In this case, we're just selecting our folds. As we select our folds, we can then select all of those folds and set those to a 90-degree and generate a model. Now that when I generate my model, it assumes a face for the model, but I know for a fact the face is on this selection, so I can change that. In here, you can see that this is a corrugated material. If I wanted to change the material of this, I have some material options as well available. So if I just wanted a white board, that makes it a thin board material, or I can use that corrugated flute material as well, or even edit or add a material as I so desire. Once I've generated that model, I can then add that model to the scene. We can see our folds over here. Now when I click the Illustrator link and it takes me back into Illustrator, it allows me to get in here and see my die line that I just imported as a guide within Illustrator to allow me to place my artwork. So I'm just letting Illustrator launch here. Now I can come in, place my artwork. So if I choose my artwork here, go ahead and place that, and then update IC3D. Now as I update IC3D, we see that it's up to date. You can see that this has a little bit of a lower res look to this as we're zoomed into this carton. The reason for that is I've been working in preview. Typically I work in preview when I'm aligning things, getting things positioned, and putting the artwork onto a file. Until I get to a position where I know everything is where I want that, I can then go ahead and choose a high-res render, which allows me to take all the information from Illustrator. It will tell me again it's receiving an update, and then updating back to IC3D. Once that update's received, we can come back into IC3D, and we'll see that high-res resolution within here. And we can look around at this product to see our text clarity and everything of that nature. And if we wanted to come in here and actually start to add some dynamic lighting, we can come in and we can use our environment-based or image-based lighting, which allows us to bring in different environment maps. So we can choose from different store environments, different even light box environments to where I want to position lighting on my scene and get some different aspects of light. I'll show you that on some other products as well. Then within here too, we can also start adding reflections on the floor to give us some realism and some of that photorealistic pieces that we have. I'll go through the exports that we can do towards the end so you get an idea of what options we have for an export. But that would be carton fold up, and you can also get into changing that carton items within here by selecting the product. And once you do, you can go in and change those folds to whatever you would need for that. Okay. One of the other things with the flexible or the templates, we can get into bag types as well, like a gusset bag. If we're working in here, we can actually set defined width and height of a product. So if I would come in here, define my width and height for that product, show that I want to fold under that tab. So I have a nice gusseted bag. I can change the seals on the top to give them some dynamic look, and then even get into some notches, different locking mechanisms that can be added into here. As we add this model to the scene, now we have a gusseted bag. We can then go into Illustrator to add our artwork. Again, even if this isn't a die line that I worked with, I could take my measurements from the die line to use, and then I can come in here simply, place my artwork. And now that that artwork's been placed, I can then update IC3D. Now that that's up to date, we come back over into IC3D and we can see our full gusseted bag. Now in this gusseted bag, the other thing that we can do is we can show this product either full or flat, depending on what we're looking for a simulation for this product. You can see the different dimensions that it adds to that for the dynamic movement. The other thing we can do is, since this product has actually another spot, again, we can choose this, take our silver, make that more of a brushed silver appearance so that we get these little stars to come in with the material behind it and give it truly that visualization. Now again, I'm in high res, so it's taking a moment longer to update this, but we'll get that information here shortly, and you'll see those stars get a sheen to them as they come in. So now you can see that as we have that lighting. And again, if we come into our lighting and we set a different environment, we can see then again some lighting adjustments that could be made to achieve different views for that product. From there, really what I want to get into then as well is showing a final stand-up pouch that we have that I want to then put into a carton. So let me show the stand-up pouch first. So let me just open that. So here's our stand-up pouch that we have that's been made. Again, using our templates by size and showing the final piece. Now I want to take this piece and actually put it into a display tray. So while I'm working on that, I'm just going to put it in preview so we can get some speed. Drop in a display tray. I could set the size of my display tray as I want, and this will then again give me a template that I could actually add artwork to if necessary. But this makes it a shelf container. I can now add product to that. And as we were doing before, we want to add that rice in. So I can choose that, add some items across, put some items back. I can even then come in here and do some offsetting of that product so I can fit it into the container and show them stepped off like that. So now I could add artwork to this outer container if I needed to, or just put a display tray together like this and then export the imagery. From there, I want to get into showing you some of the shrink capability. As I mentioned earlier, that's one of the new functions that we've added. If we come in here, my model. So I have this little mini bottle that we can add. From here, we can come in to our template, and we have a shrink film template that we add on to here. We have a vertical shrink in this case that we want to add. We can set a specific overlap size and direction or position where we want that, so you can see the overlap that's happening. Now we do have both a basic and an advanced setup. So for the designer in the group, the basic setup is where I can just establish the cut sizes, the film lengths, and some of those basic parameters that I know of. And the advanced setup actually then fills the information that a common print shop would know from cut length, lay flat, the long lap, the short lap, information of that would be set from this information itself. So from here, we can set the information that we have. We also have the ability to add different substrate materials that we work with. And what that allows us to do is specify the different shrink percentages we have for the cuts percentages to the lay flat percentage, and then also set a bias for that, meaning what tension bias am I going to have for that output. So if I go ahead and save that and start the simulation, you're going to see this pretty quickly come in and shrink down to the form of the bottle. And we're going to see the shrink surface kind of level out here around 30–33%. Once that's leveled out, we can stop our simulation. You can see it cleans up any edges that have popped or anything of that nature. And now I can add this to our scene. In this case here, if I wanted to add artwork to this, I could come into Illustrator, add my artwork as necessary. Or if I wanted to just continue this and actually add then a duplication of this bottle, I can start adding maybe a bottle pack that I want. Again, grab my shrink, change this to a horizontal wrap, maybe give it a little extension on my cut length because I know it's going to pull in. I can edit my lay flat direction as it's going to suck in there a little bit more. Then I can start that shrink process as I need to. This one will take a little bit more time, but compared to other products, what we've seen and what other users have done with our products is we've seen it actually shrink in minutes compared to hours from other products. So this would allow me to actually pull this in a little bit further for that, that simulation. So I will show you a finished product here of what we've done for this. So if I come into my beans, this is a product where we actually shrunk it all the way around with artwork included. So in this case here, as this opens, you'll see the shrink film all the way around with the artwork placed, information like that. And then again, we can start adding in some realism and reflections or lighting as we need to for this, to whatever we're trying to achieve. So we can start moving things around for that. Okay. The one thing as well is that if there's a shape that you may not have or it hasn't been created, we do have the ability to use this 2D spinner. Where this becomes valuable is I have a demo that I'll show you shortly here where I can actually then start making a shape, maybe a bowl simply here, where I want to then add an arc control here for my bowl itself. Pop that out a little bit, add some thickness to that, and now I can update my preview so I can start making shapes. Again, this is just building a half bottle or a half shape size, and then I can add this model to the scene. I could use a material here like a black plastic and add that in. So this could be simply just making a quick bowl shape like that. That mini bottle that I showed earlier was actually done in that method. So if I drop this in and actually import data, I can import a half bottle DXF file. So I have this mini bottle here that we created. If I bring this in, you can see now the mini bottle itself. I can remove that cap, add some thickness, update that preview, and then add that in. And that's how that mini bottle was actually created from earlier. Now, one of our final pieces made that we did was using that 2D shape creation and actually coming in here and building the bowl underneath, building the lid and the internal contents using the 2D spin and then the carton on the top. And with the carton piece, if I want to move items around here, I actually have the ability to use my transformation and move these items one way or another away from that product, however I'm trying to position that and get that set for that location. So if I want to just simply slide that into my position, I can do that. So that's how you can interact with multiple pieces within IC3D. I could even start importing in maybe another piece if I needed to, but it allows me to bring in multiple pieces as well. With that, we can get even into point of purchase displays where in a point of purchase, we can actually start putting items onto the shelves for that final point of purchase display. So here's our display itself, and we'll go ahead and we'll pick some shelves within here. So we'll give it a second here to launch. So on here, once I come onto this, I can select a shelf. On the shelf here, I can then assign this as a shelf, and then I can select my products that I want to put on the shelf. So I'm using both my carton and my shelf technology within here to allow me then to bring in my bottle and position that as I need to on that shelf to center it a little bit. Once I center that, then I can start adding my product onto there. So I can just move that over, start adding some pieces on here and some piece depth, and then add some spacing between those. And if I still don't have it in my position, I can move that over. And now we have those on the shelf. If I want to keep adding onto here, I can select my next shelf, make that a shelf, and then start adding product onto here as well. Maybe that the rice vinyl here, start adding those in and move those across, position those a little bit over. Add another one on, and then add some depth to that as well. So that allows you then to come in and do that spacing. Now, in this case, once I'm done and I've got my imagery the way that I want it, I can come in here and actually do some different export capabilities. Some of the export functions that we have are the ability to do like a high-res image. One of the ones I like to show for that is I can come in here and show our orbital piece, which allows you to see that reflection and a couple different elements that have been brought into this space. When I export that and actually open that up into Photoshop from a high-res export, so let me show you the export condition. So underneath exporting, I can do a high-res image. I can define my resolution, and I can export without alpha channel or with alpha channels on. What that means is that I can actually do this with, if I show it one here, I can show it with the transparent background to allow me to put that into a scene, maybe on a tabletop or something like that, or I can open it up without that transparency, just as a flat artwork with my own simulations that we did within IC3D. You can even get that same degree with doing like that spaghetti final that we saw earlier, so it looks more photorealistic as a final piece with reflections, true clarity of text, as well as some of that defined reflections and lighting conditions from our image-based lighting. Some other functions or other abilities that we have for export is we can come in here and actually export a PDF report. That PDF report really will just show what my artwork is, my front, my top, my back of the items, just a report to show what pieces are being put together. We can also export a collada file. Collada file can be used in many different applications, from Photoshop on other output pieces. .zaes are also capable in other applications or even in mobile apps to open up. So these are a couple of export options that we have for a collada file. We also get into the ability to export an STL file. So if I had taken that mini bottle example I did earlier and I wanted to export that as an STL to actually get that printed in a 3D printer, and then take that 3D print and maybe take the shrink wrap that I have applied to there, print it using one of our other solutions, FlexPack, to get that shrink capability, shrink that onto that final 3D printed item, and show a consumer or a consumer product company what that's going to be. I could go through those steps simply through here. Another solution is Augment, where I can actually export this to a third-party online solution, which is a database online that also has a mobile app that allows you to view these with your iPhone, iPad, or Android device and see them in your environment. So I could export this spearmint gum orbital piece and send it up to here, open it with my iPhone or iPad or Android device, and actually see it on my counter or my desk or in my store in the conditions that I have. Another export option is getting into the ability for 3D PDFs. 3D PDF or U3D, basically the same thing, but this is an individual build for that. So if you have a workflow to build a 3D PDF, you can use that information. Otherwise, a 3D PDF would be just a 3D PDF of this item, allowing you to see what that would be. So we'll just save that to our desktop here. And as I export, one of the things concerning with 3D PDF is it doesn't always pick up some of those visualizations that you're looking for, right? Like that reflection, I have to zoom in to get some of that clarity of text, things of that information. So with that, what we've done as well is we've actually then gone into opening our own viewer. So if I wanted to take that same file and open it into our viewer, I would just come in, we'll open that with our viewer. So it's a separate application, allows you to send that file, that IC3 file, and now I have full movement within here, allowing me to see the lighting condition that was set, all the specifics of what was done in the main application is now capable to view within that viewer. So a nice tool for exporting that file. Another function we have is we can actually get into to exporting a movie. So what that does is that allows us to then take a product like this where I have maybe a couple different elements within here, and I want to show how they interact together. Well, in here I could actually record a freehand movie, just moving objects around, showing maybe some movement or views that a client's looking for, or I could record a timeline. The timeline is done through animation. So within the product here we have an animation script that could be built. So I can play out this animation script like this, and you can see then the product, actually put the toothpaste inside and close the lid, and then I could actually just export that as a recorded timeline movie. So now I just record that timeline, save that out, and now you'll see down here it's basically going through the frames to build this timeline for us, and then we can view that movie at the end. So beyond those exports, and the movie. I think we have a good solution for all the pieces and elements within there to show exactly how that product gets put together, multiple elements, things of that nature. Even getting into storefront pieces where I want to actually show a full product of how pieces interact and how those come together. So I can actually get into a full store visualization with items on a shelf in high-res detail, showing a movie and pulling those pieces together. Carmen, at this point, I think I can open up the floor for any questions that would be there, give enough time for that question and answer section. So not sure if you've got any questions yet, but I'm at a point where we could start.
Well, I do. I have someone raising their hand here, Mark. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you if it lets me, because it does not let me unmute you. If you could enter your question into the question session, that'd be great. Otherwise, if you have a pin, if you could enter the pin, the audio pin, then it would allow me to let you ask the question, Mark. Otherwise, in terms of questions, what I have is, so it says, I'm able to create, hold on. It says, can you add a clear window to a carton box or box?
Sure. So in that case, I'll go back into the carton template that I used earlier. I'll kind of work with the one that we did. So if I bring in that dial line from the earlier example, and if I had a cut window within there, if my dial line had that cut window, I could automatically use that. In this case, I don't have one directly, so what I'm going to do is just select my folds right now, and then I'm going to draw a cut box within here to show that come out. One sec. Oops. So then what we do have is we add some tools in here to where we can actually just come in, maybe draw a box. Oops. And once we get the box drawn, we can then start to clean this up a little bit. So I've got a box drawn. I can split the lines. It is going to give me some of those cautions because I know I didn't do a clean job of that box. But what I can do is zoom in here, and I can start cleaning up these points. What that allows me to do is actually start snapping points to others, moving points around here so that we can actually build this and straighten this piece out. Oops. So here we can straighten our edges out. Once we get this to a position we like, we can then go in here. Okay, we can split those lines again, and now if we generate our model, we can see our cut window in there. Now if I wanted to add a plastic sheet to that, I would just add a simple diagram cut for that plastic sheet, and I could use that to make a plastic window if necessary, whatever would be needed for that. Good question. Carmen?
Another question is in regards to the shrink wrap and how long it would take and how accurate is it in terms of production? Sure.
So from the shrink capability, as I kind of mentioned earlier, when we go in here to add that shrink around this product, you saw earlier how quickly it goes down to that. We're talking minutes. Our accuracy, we've gone to many different print facilities and worked with them on that shrink film, doing the different templates to verify that accuracy to that. With our ability to edit the film structure of what that percentage of shrink is for the different directions as well as a bias, it really gives us some good conditions to meet that accuracy. And as I said, you know, when you get in here and you can actually simulate this in this speed, for others that have used other products out there, you can see how quickly that does pull together for that. And then I can just add that within my product piece here for that simulation. So, and we've seen some take, and other products, many hours, and ours is quite a, few minutes to make that.
Okay. So another question is, says, I'm able to create anything that is flat-based, just nothing round. Our clients' products are very specific, and although there's an extensive library, they feel they need to create their own private custom library.
Okay. So with that, as the example I showed earlier, making that that bowl, or even just bringing in information, if I would just do that again here real quick, if I'm making a product like this and I know that that's going to be a common item that I'm always going to use, if I select this and build in my curve here real quickly, add my thickness. So once I have that piece in here, and I actually put my material to that, if I want to take that item and actually add it to my model library, I do have the ability to select this existing model, take that model and add it into my library. When I do that, I can actually then name this as whatever the product is. I can select out of my list if I have a client name that I want to use and save that directly. And then it can always have that item in there. So what that means is, instead of me have to recreate that model each time, I can easily just drag it in here, and now I have that bowl readily available for me to use. Same thing holds true when I'm working with a product like the any one of these. If I'm working with this stand-up pouch, if this is a common stand-up pouch, and I wanted to remove this artwork and always use this, I could select this and actually just add that existing model into my directory here, and then name this as it may be. I'll leave it as stand-up pouch 3, and add that for that client base as well. So now that that adds in, we can see our two pieces, and as we work them with our products, we can easily just bring them in and show that. Now, the nice thing as well, with those models being created, if I've got a list of clients in my filters here that I really need to make sure that all my users have, one of the things that we've added into here is the ability to share paths of the models and material libraries, because those are the two real customized pieces where I'm actually adding in a model or making this unique material. I can share that path across multiple computers within my environment, so that if I have multiple designers or users working within the software, I can easily, if I make one here, Carmen could have one at her desktop as well if we're sharing that model library. So it makes it very easy for somebody to maybe who's talented at creating those models, do that piece, and then others have it accessible in their area as well. Great question.
And the last and final question I have is related to the holographic images that you can do. Could you go over that a little bit?
Sure. So if I go in, I'll just let me open up one of my samples here. So the holographic example, what that does is allows me to add a holographic film to a product. And in here, the way that that's done is if I go into my artwork or my texture here, I can see that I have my holographic film added. So I have a template image. I can change the scaling within here. I can change that repeat to whatever I want to for that. Once that's been generated, then I can actually add a mask image if necessary, whatever would be necessary for that holographic film to be done. The other thing that we have here, we do have a lenticular option where I can actually start adding lenticular simulations and views for that. So that would allow me to go in and show that different lenticular view, whatever it may be. So let me get a sample that I can show for that as well for you. So the lenticular view, that allows me to bring in multiple images within there. So in here, if I would add a label on here and actually then start building that. So if I add a label, just make it on here. If I wanted to change that label size, I can directly impact that. And now since I have that as a label, I can then add my lenticular as I need to. So if I come onto the label, I can go to the lenticular, use that lenticular, browse to the images that I have for that, and add those in as a lenticular option. So in this case, I have a few images, so I'll just grab a few here to show what that would look like. And as I do that, then we have a lenticular simulation for that. Okay?
Okay, the next question, I lied, so there's one more question. It says, can custom models be brought in if in a correct file format?
Correct file format. So with the model library and importing in models, we can import, as I mentioned earlier, some of these common formats that are within here. When you bring those in, if I would import in like this STL as I did earlier, it will actually give me what the sizes are of that model for what I'm bringing in so that I know it is correct. As I do that, it will just add my model into wherever I put that. So the model sizes come in with whatever the size is from that product that's been generated, either that Collada file, STL, or Moto file, and it maintains that as that model shape within here. If the model doesn't come into complete size, and I do need to scale, we do have some tools that you can start transforming that to a specific size, so I can change the percentage of the size, elongate a bottle if I needed to, you know, or whatever is needed for that piece. So I can change that for specific needs where necessary, but typically the models would come into size, or I would start with a die line also to generate that. Hopefully that answers that question.
Okay, there's another question. It says, some customers want to know if we can export back the dynamic shrink info to know how the artwork will distort to look as they want. Can that be done?
As far as an auto or to give the information for the distortion, at this point, what we're doing is, go ahead.
As far as distorting before and after, I believe is what they're getting at.
What they're looking for, yeah. So with that, if I open up that bean example, one of the things that our development team is working on is that distortion capability to correct for distortion. We will be able to see the distortion in the visual here. You can use tools manually, like if you look here at the labels on the back, of course they're distorted. Right now we can use tools manually in Illustrator to actually add a mesh and correct for that distortion. We're adding some tools to actually allow for auto distortion as well, to correct for this distortion, to actually show it in inverse in Illustrator so that you understand what the distortion is and correct that mapping. So the tools are being made, they're just not in this current release as it sits today.
Okay, that concludes the webinar on IC3D Suite. We want to thank our dealers and our other suppliers that work with us. And if you are interested in working with one of them, please feel free to give us a call and let us know so that we can let you know which dealer or resellers in your area. The webinar will be available on our website at cgsusa.com. Probably next Wednesday it will be available, and we will send out an email to everyone that is registered, letting them know that it is available on our website. So I want to thank everyone for being here, and we'll be talking to you soon.